Hello and welcome back to the Playbase. Today I have a dear friend who, if you look in the background, you'll realize she's not in Florida. She's in Toronto. Yael Samuel, welcome to the Playbase podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
I'm
I'm so
I'm
excited.
so excited to have you here. I've known you for years, and actually the beautiful part was that we met doing the same job. You were training me on clients that I joined to I joined a new company. I started with new clients and you were training me on the clients. We worked on clients together and you happen to know my now husband, at the time boyfriend, fiance, and we built this beautiful friendship. And I think that the foundation of the friendship started from this mutual passion that we have for helping children, supporting families, and finding a different way, a way that feels good, a way that honors the individual, a way that is compassionate, loving, and caring. And I had the absolute honor of having you work with me when I started the Playbase. And now you've spread your wings. And I'd love for you to share about the incredible and truly meaningful and needed work that you do. Can you tell us a little bit about what you do?
Okay, so my company is called Kid Quest Consulting, and it started actually because of a personal matter, and that was my twins. Um, were born early, we were following them up, and there was no signs of anything physical. But with time, we saw that they had ADHD. And through the process with the pediatrician and everything, and me asking questions, I felt very lost. And there was nothing out there for them to get help at the time. And I wanted to find a way to help parents before or after an assessment to get those answers and get that help that I felt that I was missing. And I felt that I was very lonely and like people couldn't understand me. And I want to do that for parents that are in that situation right now.
That is a beautiful way. And I believe that a lot of the work that people do when they're helping others is turning their darkness, their pain, their struggle into light in some way, into helping other people so that they don't have to encounter the same struggles or the same feeling or the same challenges that they experienced. And I think it's very beautiful that you vulnerably share your story in a very honest way, because the truth is I think that there's nothing more challenging as a parent than to have your child struggle and not know how to support them. And when a
100%.
child receives a diagnosis, for instance, and from that diagnosis, there's no pathway that you're given or no clear
Right.
direction, you're not only
100%.
left with your own fear or worry, you're like stranded there unless you know yourself how to find the resources.
So that was the biggest challenge. That was my challenge is here I am, a professional who's been in this field of autism, ADHD, and all these professionals around me, and I felt lost. So I can't imagine a parent that doesn't have that information, what they're feeling. Like it could be very lonely and very scary, and you want to help them succeed, right? You want them to be able to go to every school possible that you want, and you want them to be able to go to camp, and you want them to be able to have friends, and you want them to do well in school so they can have a good future. But if you can't get them the right help, how are they supposed to do that, right?
Yeah. What would you say to a parent who maybe they just found out their child has a diagnosis? A parent that's calling you and they feel this like paralyzing fear, or maybe it's not paralyzing, maybe it's like out here, like the fear of feels like so big. What would
Right.
you what would be a place that you start with them?
I know many people say not to as professionals, to make it personal, but I've been there, I've seen it, I've done it, I've witnessed it. I'm still going through it. Nothing's perfect. Um, But when we take the first step to try to help them, that's the biggest thing that you can do as a mother. You're trying, or a parent, a father, whatever. Um, the fact that you're coming to get help is the first step.
Mm.
The fact that you're acknowledging that they need help is a big thing. And yes, it's scary, and sometimes it feels like very overwhelming and like you don't know what to do, but there is a lot of opportunities and there is a lot of help out there, good help. And that's the point of also this company, is to also provide these parents that don't know where to go to get proper professionals that can actually help and connect with their child and specifically what their child needs, right? Every child is different, and it's very important to find professionals that match what your child needs and not just go everywhere. There's a lot of professionals out there that I don't agree with what they do.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, like, there's a lot of professionals that are not suited for certain kids. And I believe in, especially the younger ages, to work with kids through play.
Yeah. I think different than in Ontario, in Florida, services, because so many of them are covered by insurance, require credentials and this and that. Not that credentials make you,
A good person.
correct. Not that credentials make that you're doing what the optimal way that a child would benefit, or a particular child. I think that in Toronto, I remember finding it odd that there would be people in positions of leadership or of power that don't have the education or credentials that I would assume they would have, who are making clinical decisions, but don't have the clinical background to make those decisions. I remember finding that shocking to learn. And so having somebody who knows what's what, having somebody who gets to know your child and says, hey, I actually think these people or this place or this approach would benefit your child. Or, I think more so in Florida than in Toronto. It's like a dog eat dog world where like people are here to make money above everything else. I think Toronto is maybe less that way, but still being like, your child doesn't need this kind of service. They actually would benefit most from this service, or I would start with this kind of service and then see how it goes and move into this. Like,
there's a lot of services, and that's the problem.
Yeah.
It's like, where do you go and who do you pick from? And how do you know that these people are right for your kid? And that's where I would help families be able to
Navigate.
pinpoint where they should navigate. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that it's such an overwhelming place to be, especially if you're not given, and even when you're given a list, it's probably just a list. It's not necessarily someone sitting down with you and saying, these are people that we have worked with, or that we know would benefit your child based on their, personality, their needs, their areas of strength. This is where I would start. It doesn't always go that way. Like, I think you have to get lucky to get guidance that way. So to have somebody that they can turn to in order to get that kind of guidance, because you found that you ended up having to figure it out for yourself. And like you said, you had connections, you had experience, you had training and knowledge and all this behind you, and still it felt overwhelming. And that to me is like, I think about parents, like if I think about myself, for instance, like this is my field, and I know that it can feel very overwhelming for me to think about what my kids need and this and that. But then I think about something I know nothing about, like nothing.
Right.
Like go into like economics, right? Investing my money. Like I have to turn to my husband because he speaks that language. But when he speaks it to me, it's not like I'm able to retain it and create deep meaning out of it and then do something about it. Like, you still have to tell me what to do because I still don't fully understand this concept, right? I don't live in this way of thinking. My brain has not gone down that pathway enough times for it to have deep-rooted meaning for me. Right. And then I think about parents who maybe work in technology, economics, or their life path hasn't made it that they understand this that well. Maybe they understand their child very well. I'm sure they understand their child and what their child needs, but not understanding OT, SLP, PT, ABA, psychiatry. Like, does my child need medication? Like, all of these things. And like how somebody will say like, oh, your child needs all of the things. Like, where do you start? And I think if we're able to no, go ahead.
Okay. So usually when a client would come with all these things, we would pinpoint first with the parents, because to me, the parents are the most important person to deal with, because at the end of the day, me and you and everybody, we come and go, but they're there forever, right?
Correct.
So what we do is usually when a client comes is we usually go through the assessment, and then we would talk the language that they might not know. And I would explain to them in terms that they would understand. And then we would pick what is the most important goals for them. And we would start with small steps and then move forward. Once one step is mastered, we would go on. But really picking the parts that are most important to that family is where we would start. And sometimes it could be very overwhelming. And that's why it's so important to break it down. Just like you would do for a child, you would do it for the parents.
100%. And I love that, because that's the approach I would take too. I would take like this big, there's a saying that my husband taught me, and it's, how do you eat an elephant? And I would never eat an elephant, but how do you eat an elephant? You eat it one bite at a time. Right. And so we have to figure out like, what is the first step? What is the priority? And how do we systematically bring you to, from this like big overwhelming experience, how can we systematically create it into steps that feel digestible, that allow you to feel like you have a path, you have, a process, where your child is headed, or how you can support your child one step at a time. Because really, we take it one day at a time, one moment at a time, one step at a time. And I think that the process can feel so overwhelming. And so being able to come to somebody who's like, hey, it's okay. Absolutely understand you, and I'm here with you, and I'm going to show you, and let's get to know you, which the same way we would work with a child, exactly like you said. Let me get to know you. Where are your values? What is the most important thing for your family, for your life right now, for your child? What does your intuition say? Not what does everyone else tell you. What is your gut telling you? Yeah. And let me help you navigate that.
Almost, I could say 99% of the time, a parent truly knows what's right for their child.
Yeah.
And that's the same feeling you should get when you're working with a professional, or when you're signing your child up to get a therapy or whatever. You should have that feeling that this is the right place. This is a good place for my child. This is the right place. And sometimes you need help. You need the help to make sure you choose that place.
Correct. And not every approach and not every person is going to be the right match for every other person. Like, it has to work, and it has to be aligned with their values, and it has to be aligned with what they're hoping to see and how they're hoping to see it. And I think that that's such a meaningful tool, such a meaningful gift to give, because you didn't have it.
Right. And also, like, I want parents to know that it's okay that they have challenges right now, right? These kids every kid has a challenge, every single kid, even if they don't have an assessment or a diagnosis, every child is dealing with something, whether you know it or not, but it's okay. And it's important, the earlier you deal with it, the better, because these challenges that are small now in the future can become bigger challenges, like social issues or learning disabilities. If you don't catch them now, it could be a lot harder later on.
Absolutely. It's harder to break any pattern later on. I think one of the things that you said is true about humanity. Like, we all, as humans, if you think about not just children, we all as humans have our own challenges, right? We learn to overcome challenges. Sometimes we have really great tools that we use to do that. Sometimes we have awful, dysfunctional ways that we think we're coping with things, right? And our goal is, as the therapists or as the coaches or as the parents or the teachers, whatever role we play for children, is to set them up for the most success that we can possibly set them up, to teach them those tools to be independent so that they can thrive on their own and like shine their light, right? And I think just remembering that your child or children will struggle.
100%.
It's inevitable. They will have their own struggle.
And us parents, we all struggle.
Yes.
We all want our child to do well. And whatever they feel, we feel 10 times more. And it's okay. And that's the other piece that I do with this company is I work with the parents to help them also have the tools that they need, right? Because it's not easy. It's not easy to navigate. It's not easy when your child is tantruming to keep it calm and collected and not feed into it. There's a lot of stuff that even as a professional, I make mistakes, and it's important, even as a parent, to constantly be mindful and be aware of how we are interacting with our children and making sure that they also feel very good about themselves and able to feel those emotions and feel secure and safe.
Yeah.
Right?
Did you, when your boys were diagnosed with ADHD, what went through your head when you received that, if you don't mind sharing?
So I always saw that they were high energy, like that they were always high energy. They were very excited, like their behaviors would be so much excitement when they would see other kids or social situations, camp, everything was like next level. I actually felt relieved. I felt relieved, like I finally got the answer that I needed in order to help them, like to figure out, like when you go for a psych ed assessment, they do a thorough assessment. They do an assessment to make sure that they're looking at anxiety, a learning disability. They're looking at all different areas of your child. And when we were able to eliminate from the psych ed assessment things that were not occurring for them, but more focusing on the ADHD, I was able to pinpoint what I need to work on with my children and what are my goals to make sure that they're successful. So it actually was relieving. It was, I don't know if everybody would be relieved when they get an assessment. Some people might take it as a negative and like, how can this happen? I don't understand. But I actually felt relieved. Like I finally got like
clarity.
the bigger picture, clarity of what was going on. And I felt relieved. I felt like I can now navigate where I need to go with them and what I need to do to help them.
Yeah, one of the things that I say about assessment is that it takes out a lot of the guesswork. You know, like, yes, we understand our kids. Yes, we know our kids, but there are things that we need to piece together to create a full picture, right? That allow us to understand, because we see our kids in specific environments and we don't see them in others. Like I don't see my kids at school. I don't see how they navigate, you know, the school environment, social situations in that environment. I don't see how they interact with the world when I'm not present. And having an assessment that looks at, you know, the way that they learn, the way that their brain is functioning. And it's, I think the challenging part comes from this, I think it's like fear, but there's also like self-judgment as a parent that may come up, you know, like maybe I missed something or I didn't do something, you know, like I think about immigration, you know, as a mom and what immigration did to my kids, how it might have added a stressor. And I had a conversation with my sister-in-law yesterday, and I was talking about how anxiety kind of came up, especially for one of my kids when we immigrated. And one of the things that she said to me, which is something I know, is that like I know this from studying, right? Nothing comes out of nowhere. Nothing is like
Right.
my fault. It was this added stressor that allowed it to show up in this
Right.
way. It wasn't
Right.
non-existent until this happened, right?
Right.
This trauma, this stress, this experience made it louder or more
Right.
visible because of
Right.
what was already brewing underneath that may not have been evident or may not have been as big. So,
Right.
sometimes we'll see things in a school environment where, performance and boundaries and demands may be higher that we don't see at home. And so sometimes I think an assessment may also surprise a parent like, oh, that's not how I experience my child necessarily in all ways. But then when you read and you understand the depths of it, which is really the most important part of the assessment is not the label. The label
100%.
can give you access to resources depending on what that label is and what kind of resources your child needs. It may absolutely not, because like a diagnosis of ADHD doesn't necessarily give you anything,
Right.
right? A diagnosis of autism can, but a diagnosis of ADHD may not help you get resources, but it will. It's like understanding what is written in the body of the assessment is actually the most important part. Because like
Right.
you said, it gives you information that I may or may not have known, but like it may solidify something for you and validate something for you. Like, see, yeah, like that makes sense to me. Or it may
Right.
provide clarity for something you were like, oh, I didn't know that, or I didn't realize that, or I didn't think of it that way. And now this makes sense. Like why morning routines or bedtime, I want to pull my hair out of my head. It's like, oh, and if I
Right.
add a visual schedule or I do X, Y, or Z, or I change this, it'll allow them to be more successful because this is how their brain works. And that's the beauty of the assessment. And I think having somebody who
Right.
understands what is in this body, because they're lengthy. A really good
They are.
assessment can be very lengthy, right? And having
Right.
somebody say, hey, I want you to look at this. Okay, this is what this means, and I want you to see it this way. And when they're saying this, this is what they mean. And these recommendations, I would start here because this is,
Right.
in speaking to you, these have been your priority. These are your goals right now. So this is where I would go. And having somebody navigate that with you, it
Big
feels
thing.
like you took like you walk around with a weighted vest or whatever, you take that vest off and you're like, oh, okay. Like I don't have to walk around with this extra weight of stress because somebody has explained it to me if I don't necessarily understand. And I think so many people look at the title, like the label, go, oh my God. Or they go, oh, that makes total sense. Whatever it is that their response is. And don't necessarily go in depth into what that means about their child, because that label presents totally differently in every single child and probably differently in your two boys who are twins. I'm sure that there are
Right.
differences in the
Very,
way.
very different. They're identical twins and they present things differently, totally differently. One is definitely more struggles with emotional regulation. The other one struggles with inability to stop talking. um, so they present it differently. They're both, what was interesting in the assessment and something that I thought was very interesting is so, and this is very personal. When they showed us, because they test their academic skills and their learning ability. So they tested very high academically, but impulse and, what's it called? Sorry, lost my train of thought. Impulse and maturity
Mm-hmm.
was way lower. So like you have this child that is talking to you at a very high level, but it's very hard sometimes for parents to understand that they're still younger and maybe in their maturity is younger and their impulsivity is much younger. And it's hard sometimes for a parent to see the difference. And many kids with ADHD, that's what they struggle with. Sometimes their impulsivity, their maturity is not at the same level as their
IQ, their
academic
EQ
or
and their
IQ.
IQ are
Yeah,
yeah.
so different. And that's a big thing, right? And sometimes,
Especially because when, like you said, they're communicating with you in this like almost adult way, but they're not able to behave at the same level that they're able to communicate or that they're able to intellectualize something. But IQ and EQ are very separate. Our
right,
ability to understand a concept and our ability to understand ourselves and our emotions and self-regulation and how I need to interact in a social setting or whatever, very different skills, very different part of the brain.
100%. And that's a big part. And that's where I also recognize that I'm looking at my child or any child sometimes, like that, even that I work with, I have to figure out a way to kind of balance it out and remember how they are taking in information, even though they could take it in very high, and but to break it down at a level that matches where they're at, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, meeting your kids or meeting anyone where they're at.
Right.
I think that's a beautiful gift that ABA really gave me and probably gave you, is a shift in the way that I see things, in the way that I see people, in the way
Right.
that I communicate, to be very intentional. Because, like, I remember I volunteered in Israel for a program called Save a Child's Heart. And in Israel, they do this, they provide heart surgery for children who need it, whom in their where they live, in the countries where they live, they don't have access to that. So they'll fly the kids over to Israel and they'll provide this heart surgery. So there are children from Africa, from I don't I think all the kids were from Africa that I saw, different parts of Africa, and none of them spoke English.
Wow.
And they're all in this house with their moms. And as a volunteer, I ran programs with them and played with them and spent time with them in the house that they stayed in before and after surgery. And we went to the hospital to visit them as well. And I remember at first being like, what are we going to do? How are we going to communicate with them? They don't speak English. And then I thought, that doesn't matter. Because I've worked with children who didn't know how to communicate yet.
Yeah.
Right? And learning to meet someone where they are, pair with them and communicate with them and build a relationship with them where they are is a part of this approach, right? It's like a child who isn't even always aware of my presence. How do I engage with them in that environment? Or a child who doesn't communicate with verbal language yet, or a child who doesn't speak English or any language that I speak. How do I meet them where they are? And I feel like ABA taught me naturally through working with so many different people over the years and finding different ways to communicate and to connect, that I have to meet a child where they are. And I think I've kind of adapted that to my life.
Also, not just meeting them where they are, but like seeing them as a human being and someone who, even though they're not communicating, they're taking in everything from the environment. They're understanding everything we're saying. And it might not be exactly the way that we do, but they hear us, they feel us, they know what's going on. They might be taking it in a totally different way, but they're very much aware of what's going on. And you need to respect them. You need to respect their needs, their communication, their sensory needs. And that's really where I think that's where we connected also, is when you're providing a therapy, is treating them as a human and as someone that is understanding the world, not like we are, maybe not the way that we're typically known to do, right? But they're still they're humans. They're important.
And
They
they're
need respect.
They are highly intelligent, far beyond our intelligence. And I believe through my experience and through research I've done that they're not only picking up the information that we say, and like you said, that they can feel us. I think that they're experiencing the world in a cosmic way that far exceeds our ability to even pick up that information. They are more here and here than we are. And they're able to grasp and hold on to, even if they're not able to communicate it yet. I actually had a conversation with friends of mine who shared with me after listening to my podcast and hearing about what I do. They shared with me that they had a friend who had a child who was nonverbal for a little bit and now is able to communicate. And the dad and this boy had, not the father of the child, but the dad that I know, who's a friend of the child. They had a good relationship. They liked each other. And he said that he would look at this boy and he would say, I know you hear everything. I know that you're picking up on everything. And he said the boy would sit there and smile like, He couldn't express himself yet. And I remember for years I would work in schools or with different people, even with parents who would speak about their child in front of them. But because they weren't able yet to communicate, they assumed that they also weren't able to cognitively, like receptively take that information in. But they can.
I have an interesting story. I worked with a child from age, I believe, 3 to 5 or 6. And at that time, he wasn't very verbal. He had some verbal ability. And recently, the mom and the therapist that works with him now contacted me and we FaceTimed. And it was remarkable. He remembers everything that we did with the dates and the times and what we did and what we baked and what we did. And he remembers doing IES with me and like, where do you put the end of the IES? Like, do you put it in the empty bin? It was a joke to him, but it was so funny. He's 15 now and he remembers everything that happened then. And if I didn't see him as that person at that time, like, I can't imagine how he would remember me. And I don't want anyone to remember me or any therapist in that matter like that. Like, I want people to remember me like that I took the time and I sat down with him and we baked and we tried different things to connect with each other in ways that typically you wouldn't understand, but it was a connection that we had. And I was able to teach him through that, right? In a way that was a connection that I don't think most people understand, but it's important that parents know that if they're not communicating the way that we typically communicate, it doesn't mean that they don't understand. They understand a lot.
They have you heard of the telepathy? I don't know, how am I saying this? Telepathy tapes? How do you say it? Telepathy? How do you say it? I'm saying it wrong. Have you heard of this podcast?
No.
I want you to look it up after we're done. I learned about this through listening to a Joe Rogan podcast. Clearly I love podcasts, okay? And she has done research on specifically what would be called the nonverbal community.
Right.
These individuals have gifts and knowledge that exceed anything that anyone around them has ever taught them.
Right.
Learning languages nobody speaks around them that they could not have had access to. So they learn languages, telepathic ways of understanding, like hearing what people think. I actually spoke to a potential RBT who lives in New York, and he works at a camp. And at this camp, there's a boy, and they will play this game. I'm thinking of something. Tell me what I'm thinking. And he, with 100% accuracy, can tell them what it is.
That's crazy.
Like, the gifts far exceed, I understand what you're saying. I can understand what you're saying. I know everything you're saying. I may not show you that expressively. I may not be able to express that to you yet. I understand everything.
In this typical way that society expects them to, right?
Exactly. I cannot express it to you yet. Also, I want you to look up Spellers. If you have not watched the documentary Spellers, it is mind-blowing. I cried. It was beautiful. Spellers,
Where is it
telepathy
on
tapes.
Netflix? Or-
I think Spellers is on YouTube. I think I watched it on YouTube. Or Google it. There might be like a link on their website. I don't remember. I watched it a while ago. I bawled watching Spellers. She also, in the telepathy tapes, I feel like I'm saying that in a very funny way. But anyways, she also, she works with kids who, or adults also, who use the program Spellers. It is mind blowing, but it also is so validating for me because I have over the years felt it and witnessed it. Like I remember having a client and the mom saying, I know this sounds like odd to hear, but he's very angelic. And I remember meeting him and I came to her and I said, it's not odd at all. He absolutely is. There is this like angelic energy to him. And not because he's an angel and perfect. Like, no, like there is like this light around him, this energy that you can feel. And like he's experiencing something I can't see and I can't experience. But it's just because I can't doesn't make it not real, doesn't make it fiction. We actually have so much information to know that it's not. It's that it is real. It's not imaginary. It's not, you know, and it's.
I remember seeing these, like when I was directly working with the kids like that. I remember just always being in an aha moment, like, well, and reminding it like little reminders of how beautiful, like how they see the world and how they take it in, and how it's just it's like a feeling that I don't know. I feel so privileged to have witnessed it, and it's these kids are incredible. Like I think that every kid has so much power and so much to give, and I wish parents see that even if they're struggling in ways that it's okay. There's people out there that want to help and understand and can see your child for who they are, right?
You know, it's probably the thing that we really probably bonded over the most. And I think it's the way we probably view people in general, is seeing their light and seeing their gifts and not seeing them as a list of, you know, never looking at a kid as a list of things that needs to be changed or that's wrong with them, because there's nothing wrong with them, but providing them with the tools that they need in order for them to thrive, and seeing them as absolutely magical and incredible, because they are. And I remember, like, I cannot tell you, because it's countless times, the thing that people say to me when they find out what I do for a living is always, wow, you must be so patient. And I think, I don't know, maybe I am. I actually don't feel like I'm trying to be patient. I feel like you, like what a gift it is to learn about the world and to see the world and experience it through someone else's eyes. I have countless times said, I wish for a day I could live inside your brain to see and experience and feel what you see, experience, and feel. Like, not because I wish to be a different person, but because I, as an empath, as somebody who feels so deeply for other people, imagine it in a way. I love to experience it, to feel the way somebody who has hypersensitivity or hyposensitivity experiences it, or who, you know, experiences all the stimulation at the same time, or feels and experiences the universe in a way that I haven't yet. Because what a gift it is to understand that somebody else's experience is just as important as mine, and I'm going to support them through theirs, because
Right.
I may not see the world the way that they do. Like you express that, like they experience the world. Each of us experiences the world through our own lens, which stems
Right.
from our own attachment styles, our own personality, our own neurology. Then comes our traumas. Then comes our, generational traumas. Then like there's an abundance of things that make up the lenses within which we experience the world. And so you and I can walk through the exact same doors and see the exact same thing, but experience it totally differently. Even though I'm considered neurotypical, I think. I don't really know what is neurotypical. But anyways, I do not have a diagnosis of being neurodiverse in some way.
Right.
So you and I could have the same no diagnosis, or even have the same diagnosis. Like maybe we both have ADHD, or we're both autistic, and we walk in through the same doors into the same room and experience it totally differently because of the lens within which we experience the world. And it's not just the way we view it, but the way our brains process it, the way our energies feel it, the way that our hearts and what are we drawn to? What captures our attention?
Right.
And all of that
And
is so
that's
different.
that what you said is everyone sees everything in their own lens. We can experience the same thing, but in a different way. And that is so important with therapies or therapists to
Yeah.
understand. Dealing with a child, it is not like a cookie cutter like therapy. It has to be designed for that child, and you need to know how to connect with that child and know the right programs for that child. Because they are different. They're experiencing it in a different way than the child that you may have seen in the morning versus the afternoon. Everyone is so different, and that's so important. The point that you said that we all experience things differently. And I think that's what's important for their parents that are planning to register their children for therapy, OT, PT, SLP, that when they're picking a therapy, that they're also picking someone that is individualizing a program for their child that matches their child. Again, I keep saying matches their child because every child experiences everything differently, even if it's the same time. Like my two identical twins are going to experience something the same time, but they're going to take it in different ways because they take in everything in their own way, right?
Yeah.
So what you were saying is so important for therapists, anyone who's listening. Like, remember when you are planning for a child, a program or anything, please individualize it to that child.
I actually love to share your example, because I think people will assume, that they did something wrong, or that whatever. You have identical twins with the same diagnosis, and they present
Not
differently.
exactly the same. Yeah, they present differently. Exactly.
And so raised in the same house by the same parents at the same time, like not even like, Gabor Mate says no siblings were raised by the same parents, because like, you change and you grow and you experience different things, and we change as we experience life and we learn and whatever. But they had the same parents. They're twins. They were being raised at the exact same time. So their environment was the same.
It was.
And for them, they are still different and unique. And so I want
Here's
to that identical piece is like.
Thing is, and if any parent out there that is trying to understand their child and thinking that their child may have ADHD, I or my husband did not cause their ADHD. Like we didn't give them ADHD. Whatever we did in our house doesn't cause ADHD. It's
Neurological.
part of it's a neurological, it's in them. And
Correct.
Maybe there's genetic pieces. Maybe both me and my husband have that genetic component, but it didn't happen in our environment. Like,
I don't know if people know that many years ago, parents of autistic children were blamed And mothers specifically were blamed, saying that their children were this way because they were not given love and attention. And this, like, there was a real thing that happened that many years ago, that was the psychology. The psychology was that way. And I want people to understand that it's not. And I don't, I know that as a parent, like, guilt and the guilt that we carry, and not necessarily for diagnoses, because I'm not saying parents feel guilty for that, but the guilt that we carry for every little thing, like mom guilt, is a real heavy thing. And I think for me, being somebody who's a professional in this field, who coaches parents, who trains therapists, who is so passionate about this, I feel like my guilt is like added with an extra layer of like, well, you know better. You should do better because you know better. And then it's like, God, like even right after I do something, I'm like, oh, I know better, but I still do.
It's very hard as a parent, like especially as a professional, that we're dealing with all these other kids, but when it comes to our kids, and I'm not saying that we don't have these emotional connections with these other kids, but there's something about a maternal connection. Sometimes it's so hard to follow through with all the things that we know, and sometimes we make our own mistakes, and that's okay, but the guilt is beyond fine. But going back to what you said before, is how with the autistic kids and the parents were blamed for it. I actually had a client, the parents came to me, and the father could not understand. He thought that it was something that happened in the birth. Like he thought that it was something that happened during when she was carrying the baby. How come they couldn't see it in the ultrasounds? How come they didn't do testing? How can they not? You can't see that. You can't see autism in an ultrasound. You can't see it. It's not something that the mother did. It's not something that she could have controlled or done. It is.
Yeah.
It is what it is, right? It is. And that I had to show him research that that's not the mother's fault, and that there's no evidence that it shows that it's in utero or any of that.
Right. And I think
if she was anxious or not anxious when she was pregnant, it has nothing to do with him having autism, right?
Right. And I think that with all this like Tylenol research that's coming out and vaccines and people's perspectives on this, which I don't want to go down that road. I think that at this point, it doesn't matter. Like this is, if something caused it, it's only important to know if you don't want to repeat something. But to be honest, the truth, and I think the crux of it is what can I do to support my child? That's 100%. That's really what it is.
Stop focusing on the label or what caused it, and focus on what needs to be done to help them so that they can go to school, that they can go to camp, that they can live their best life, that they can do self-care and be able to function in society with support or without support, right? The goal is to get them to be independent, to be able to dress themselves, to brush their teeth, to be healthy.
Yeah, and to share, kids, right? To share their light and their brilliance with the world, because I always say, like, look at the most brilliant people in history. The most brilliant people who changed this world. I can't say 100% because I don't know. But the vast majority were neurodiverse. And they created massive change. They shared information that other people weren't able to discover. They made a difference, and to be able to share a different way of seeing, a different way of experiencing,
different way of thinking outside of the box, like not the way that we all follow, right?
Yes. It's actually, if you allow for it, it's actually a beautiful gift. And I also believe strongly that every soul comes on this planet with their own karma, what they're here to experience.
Right.
And if you have a child with a need, I don't see it as a punishment. I see it as an opportunity. I see it as an opportunity to grow, to see a different way, to receive love in a different way. Like, somebody I know had a child with Down syndrome. And it was really hard, for them at first. And then the mother shared with me, to be loved by this child, like there's nothing like it. And I said, right? Like that intensity of pure love, she's never felt that before. Like, what a gift to be able to receive it that way, and not to see the child as only a list of needs that she has, but also as like, wow, look at this gift that she's giving the world. Look at this bright light that she is, And I think,
I wanted to share one more thing. I don't know if I shared it before, but so with my twins, right? So I do a lot of stuff with them. I talk a lot about like emotional regulation and all this other stuff, right? So my kids had to pick somebody that they admire. And like, I never took in if they're actually taking everything that I say or if they're learning or whatever. But in the report, it talks about like all of the things that I've done and all the things that all the tools and strategies that I've given them. And they're only 10. So like, it's pretty amazing that they're able to comprehend it. And even their teachers say like, when they bring up like strategies in class, they're like, oh, my mom taught me that. And they're like, what does your mom do? And they're able to explain to the class about those things. And it's like, I like, to me, like my kids, thank God, they're in a regular classroom. They're totally fine. They're socially doing so much better. They're very athletic. They're in really competitive sports. I'm very, very privileged to be able for them to do that. I know that not everybody's outcome is like that, but I work hard with them. I teach them. I give them the tools and the strategies, and it does work when you give them consistent tools and strategies, and also be aware of how you are parenting, right? Because like it's very easy to get upset, and it's easy to blow up when they're tantruming, and it's easy to like have those moments. But when he wrote that paragraph, I was in an awe moment. Like, okay, like wow, all these years I've been like saying things. I didn't know if they were comprehending them. Like, yes, I've seen them shift and be able to do all these amazing things and be able to go to camp and go to school and all these things. But it was just like an eye opener. It was like so beautiful to be able to hear that he has these tools and now he knows how to use them. And he recognizes that I, as his mother, was able to give him those tools. Like it was just like it was a crazy moment.
It's so beautiful that of all the people he could have chosen in the world, he said he admires his mom and acknowledged you for the gifts you've given him. Like, aside from giving him life and loving him and caring for him and unconditionally providing him with everything, you validated him, you understood him, you had compassion for him, and not just gave him love, but you also gave him the tools. And that is, I hope you've been able to like really sit in that. That is such a beautiful moment. Like, frame
and he's
that.
only 10. So that just shows you, I was, being 10 years old. And like, that's another thing is like, here's that part of him. He's so much more now. His emotional intelligence and his awareness of all these things is because he has these tools.
Yeah.
He's able to, I don't know how many 10-year-olds can acknowledge like all the hard work that they had to go through and all the strategies and tools that they have to break down in order to succeed, right? Like, that's a lot for a 10-year-old. like taking a moment where like they're very overwhelmed in class, where there's like all these kids are making noise and they're able to sit down and get ready to work. That's a lot for a child with ADHD in a classroom, or a child with autism or anything, right? Like
Yeah.
the having those tools to be able to sit and wait to be able to do their work is like, that's what I hope for most parents, to acknowledge that that we can do that. We can be able to, and the kids will be thankful and will be able to succeed in life, right?
Yeah. And they'll have
And trust
confidence
me,
that they can.
my children are not perfect. My 10-year-olds are still very
Nobody
active,
on this
still
planet is
behavioral,
perfect.
still all that stuff. No, no. I'm
Yeah.
just saying that there are those moments that are just like,
But
wow.
they experience success and they have confidence because they have the tools and they can use
Right.
them. That's so beautiful. Yeah, Al, I'm going to have it in the show notes, but if somebody wants to reach out to you to get support, how can they get support from you?
So they can reach me at my email, which is info@kidquest.com, kidquestconsulting.com. And then I also have a phone number. I don't remember it by heart, so I'm going to read it out. 647-231-8644. And that's the business line.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah,
Beautiful.
they can reach me that, or they can reach on the website and they can book a call. So the first call is 30 minutes for free. It's like an intake, and they can ask questions. We can see if we match each other,
Mm-hmm.
if we're the right fit, and then we would start the process.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
I like to ask everyone that I have on my show to share a thought or a question that they want the listeners to sit with, something for them to think about for themselves, a statement, a thought, or a question. Do you have something for our listeners to sit with?
I think like the biggest message is your child's struggles are not their definition. They're not bad kids. They are good kids. There's no such thing as a bad kid. Their struggles are not who they are. And it's okay to ask for help. As a parent, like we're all, even as professionals, we ask for help. We ask questions. We talk to each other. We seek out help. It's okay to ask for help
Yeah.
when you're not sure of what to do next. And the other piece is I really wish we can change this mindset about labels and diagnosis and assessments. It's not something to fear at all. And
Yeah.
I really, really want parents to be more open-minded and understand that it's just to provide you with a little bit of more perspective of what your child is dealing with. And then we can break it down to give us a way to navigate.
Beautiful.
Not really a question, it's really more of a statement, I guess.
Yeah. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for taking time out of your day to be with us and share your wisdom, share your experience in this beautiful, vulnerable way, and sharing your light. Thank you so much, Yael. I had so much fun catching up with you.
Thank you so much for having me, and thank you. It was just so much fun to talk to you. I love talking to you. I always try to book up time with you just to chat and get to
Yeah,
pick
we
your
should hop
brain.
on a call just for fun after.
Okay.
Thank you
Thank you
so
so
much.
much.
Mwah.
Bye.
Bye.